Hey everyone, Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys a brand new 2016 album review. And today we're going to be looking into one of my most anticipated albums of 2016. And as you can see below the title, we're going to be reviewing, yep, it came out today, new Metallica album, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. Now, everybody should know who Metallica are. They definitely don't need an introduction. One of the most important bands in heavy metal history. Been around for 35 years. Basically, the pioneers of the thrash metal genre with bands like Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax, and also part of the Big Four with those three bands I just mentioned. And this album, the new album right here, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, is the follow-up to 2008's Death Magnetic, which I thought was a pretty good album. But the question to ask, does this album live up or top Death Magnetic? In my honest opinion, it definitely has. I like this a lot more than Death Magnetic. So, I mean, it's been 8 years since Metallica had a new album out, and it's the longest gap between studio albums in their career, and I just was really hyped. I mean, the first time I heard the first single, Hardwired, I was like, wow. It's like, Metallica are back. Like, I wasn't even expecting it. It just happened out of the blue, and I was like, wow. And I was hoping, like, the rest of the songs are going to be like it, and it turns out it are. Yeah, and this album, I think, is their best album in nearly 25 years. Probably Injustice for All. I love this album. I mean, one thing I noticed, the production on this is spot on. Everything is where it needs to be. And vocally, James Hetfield sounds better than ever. And yeah, and the guitar playing from him and Kirk just are really great. And the solos that Kirk comes up on this album are just really just ripping. And the bass playing is a little bit audible from Robert Trujillo. You can hear it. And Lars Ulrich's drumming is surprisingly pretty solid compared to other Metallica albums. And so yeah, without further ado, let's dive into this track by track. So starting off with disc 1, we go into Hardwired. Now obviously I did a track review of this song. If you want to see that review, just look through it. And my thoughts pretty much still stay the same. It's a pretty aggressive track and a really great way to start off this album. Then we go into Atlas Rise. Well, now, instrumentally, this kind of reminds me a little bit of Iron Maiden a little bit. It has a bit of an anthemic vibe to it, but it still has a bellowing of thrash aesthetic to it, and it has a little bit of a ripping guitar solo from Kirk. Now That We're Dead, it's a pounding, overdriven slab of stadium-filled heavy metal. Very crunchy, very hard-hitting. Moth in the Flame, which I feel like this song kind of like the calling for Metallica saying that we are back with a vengeance. But new Metallica in 2016, I think Moth in the Flame is that song for me and in my opinion. Dream No More. Now, the opening kind of reminds me a little bit of Sad But True. It's dirgy and sleazy sounding, and it's a stomping song. And closing off disc 1 is a Halo on Fire, which is a slower paced song, which is still Metallica, but it feels like it gets a little bit muddled in there. I mean, the muted verses with the not interacting with the mix, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's a good song, but I don't know, it kind of muddles a little bit. Now, moving on to disc 2 with the song Confusion, which is a not quite as a big statement as like Hardwired, which opened up disc 1. It's a much slower song, and it has like 2 guitar solos in there. And it feels like this song could have been a little bit shorter. That's just my nitpick about that one song. Then we go into Man Unkind, which the song title kind of sounds a little bit uninspiring, but it doesn't matter. It's a revving riffs and just some great undertones to it. Here Comes Revenge, just some heavy chugging guitars, very menacing grooves in there. Am I Savage? Which is a grimace and dusting groove in there. It's another groove-based song. Murder One has some big drums in there, and lyrically, I feel like this is kind of like an ode to the late Lemmy from Motorhead, rest in peace, with like aces and iron horses mentioned throughout the song. And closing off this whole entire album and disc 2 is Spit Out the Bone, which is turbocharged, full of piss and vinegar. It's just a balls out savage and metal. I think it's a great way to end this 2 opus. Now, of course, I also got the special edition of it, which actually has a 3rd disc, and which I'll also review, which is the song Lords of Summer, which is actually the song they put out like 2 years prior to this album. And I think it's a pretty good song. I like it. The Running Rising melody, which is kind of like a little melody of like Ronnie James Dio songs, and I haven't really listened to that song yet, but um, When a Blind Man Cries, I have never even heard this song. I think it's a cover. And then they covered Iron Maiden's Remember Tomorrow, which I honestly heard it, and I think it's a pretty good cover. And the rest of the songs are pretty much live tracks of Helpless, Hit the Lights, The Four Horsemen, Ride the Lightning, Fade to Black, Fight Fire, Jump in the Fire, For Whom the Bells Toll, Creeping Death, Metallica, and the live version of Hardwired. Now, overall, Hardwired to Self-Destruct is a really great comeback for Metallica. 8 years since their last album, and boy, was it worth the wait. I promise you won't be disappointed. It's a really good album. If I were to give this album a score, I'd probably give this like an 8.5 out of 10. It's a really good album. I highly recommend you check this album out. You won't be disappointed. So yeah, that's my review of the new Metallica, guys. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all in the next video, and keep it metal.